Spending over 4 hours daily in seated positions triggers a silent biomechanical cascade where hip flexor muscles gradually distort spinal alignment, producing the chronic lower back discomfort that resists conventional treatment. Elite military operators identified a rapid intervention during high-stress operations that addresses the underlying mechanism responsible for the majority of persistent lumbar pain. The issue isn't located where you feel it. Your back serves as the messenger for dysfunction originating in your hips. Within minutes, you'll discover the specific intervention protocol that prevents debilitating injuries in personnel who routinely transport heavy loads across extended distances. You'll understand why previous attempts delivered only fleeting improvements and gain access to a lasting solution requiring minimal daily investment. The mechanism operates continuously beneath conscious awareness. Each hour spent at desks, in vehicles, or relaxing on furniture causes your hip flexor complex, particularly the psoas major, to adapt to shortened positioning. This deep muscle originates along your lumbar vertebrae, travels through your pelvic cavity and inserts on your femur. Sustained sitting locks it in contracted state for cumulative hours across days, months, and years. Pain emerges from this adaptation. The chronically shortened psoas functions as tension cable drawing your pelvis into anterior rotation. Visualize a belt tightened excessively at the posterior aspect. Your pelvis tilts forward beyond neutral. Your lumbar curve increases beyond healthy range. Your vertebral column experiences compression forces similar to an accordion being squeezed. Your spinal segments stack like building blocks. When hip flexors rotate the pelvis anteriorly, the entire structure tilts, concentrating tremendous pressure on lumbar discs and facet joints. This sustained compression generates the persistent ache that never fully resolves. Data reveals that the overwhelming majority of adults in sedentary cultures display measurable anterior pelvic deviation. Your spine endures continuous compression throughout waking hours, yet standard medical approaches completely overlook this foundational cause. Healthcare providers won't emphasize this connection because their training prioritizes symptom management over causal correction. They prescribe analgesics to suppress pain signals or recommend therapy targeting back muscle development. Neither strategy addresses the contracted tissue pulling your skeletal structure out of optimal alignment. Special operations medical personnel identified this relationship during demanding field conditions. When missions require carrying substantial gear across 12-hour periods, physical impairment becomes mission failure. Their research teams engineered a time-efficient protocol that releases hip flexor restriction, re-engages stabilizing musculature, and restores proper spinal positioning within 90 seconds. The sequence divides into 3 distinct phases. The opening 30 seconds target hip flexor release. Position yourself kneeling on one knee before elevated furniture. Rest the top of that same foot on the cushion behind you with shin against the furniture surface. Your opposite foot plants firmly ahead with knee forming a right angle. The critical element involves pressing your hips forward while maintaining upright torso position. You'll immediately sense intense stretch through the anterior hip region. That's your psoas releasing accumulated tension. The metaphorical cable finally loosens. Maintain this position while breathing deeply from your diaphragm, establishing 4-count inhalation and exhalation rhythms. Deep respiratory patterns activate parasympathetic nervous system responses, signaling muscular tissue that relaxation is safe. The stretch intensifies without crossing into pain territory. This represents your hip flexor elongating after extended periods of adaptation to shorten length. The compressed sensation in your lumbar region should begin diminishing as your pelvis gravitates toward neutral alignment. Sustain this position for a full 30 seconds on the initial side. Without furniture access, execute a standing variation by stepping one foot backward into deep lunge position, lowering your rear knee toward ground while driving hips forward. The subsequent 30 seconds require gluteal activation. Immediately following hip flexor release, you must engage your posterior hip musculature. Hip flexors and glutes operate in reciprocal relationship. When anterior hip muscles remain chronically contracted, posterior muscles essentially deactivate. Your gluteal complex functions as your body's primary spinal support architecture, stabilizing pelvis and vertebral column during all movement. After completing the 30-second hip flexor stretch, transition to supine position. Bend both knees with feet flat on surface approximately hip width apart. Press your lumbar spine firmly into the ground. You should perceive your pelvis rotating slightly backward, opposite to the anterior tilt generating your discomfort. Contract your glutes maximally and elevate your hips off the surface into bridge configuration. Your body should form unbroken alignment from shoulders through knees. This isn't about achieving height but about generating intense muscular contraction in your gluteal tissue. Hold the peak position and squeeze your glutes with maximum possible force. The cue about cracking a walnut between your buttocks isn't mere motivation. It's neural recruitment strategy ensuring you're activating the complete gluteal complex rather than compensating through hamstrings or lumbar erectors. This represents your glutes re-establishing functionality, relearning their role in spinal support and pelvic stabilization. Maintain this bridge for 30 seconds, preserving intense gluteal contraction throughout the duration. Breathe normally. Your glutes should experience burning sensation, indicating motor unit recruitment and muscular tissue resuming work it has been avoiding. The final 30 seconds complete the spinal reset. Move into quadruped position on the floor. Begin with the flexion component of cat-cow movement. Round your vertebral column toward ceiling, tucking chin toward chest and drawing navel toward spine. Sense each individual vertebra separating. Hold for 5 seconds. Flow into the extension component by arching your back, allowing your abdomen to drop toward floor while lifting head and tailbone toward ceiling. Hold for 5 seconds. Alternate between these positions for the complete 30 seconds, executing 3 full cycles. This gentle spinal mobilization creates space between vertebral segments, permitting intervertebral discs to decompress and rehydrate. It's analogous to giving each spinal section breathing room after sustained compression throughout the day. After completing 90 seconds on your initial side, switch and repeat the complete protocol on your opposite side. Total investment is 3 minutes to address both sides thoroughly. Most back pain interventions fail because they focus on the location of symptoms rather than the origin of dysfunction. Research demonstrates that in the vast majority of chronic lumbar pain presentations, the discomfort originates from hip flexor restriction and resultant anterior pelvic rotation. Your psoas muscle connects directly to your lumbar vertebrae. When contracted, it draws those segments forward and downward, creating compression forces. No quantity of back-focused stretching or strengthening will correct a problem originating in your hip region. This explains why back stretching proves ineffective. You're addressing the symptom while ignoring the cause. The 3-phase protocol targets the actual source. First, we release the contracted tissue pulling your pelvis out of alignment. Second, we reactivate the musculature that should be providing pelvic stabilization. Third, we decompress and reset your vertebral positioning. This is why elite operators can complete punishing missions carrying heavy loads without developing chronic lumbar dysfunction. They prevent the problem at its origin rather than managing downstream effects. When you implement this protocol twice daily, morning and evening, anticipate immediate relief. Most individuals perceive noticeable difference within the initial 90 seconds. That restricted, compressed sensation in your lumbar region begins easing as your pelvis returns toward neutral positioning. Within 1 to 2 days, you'll notice substantial reduction in morning stiffness. That discomfort experienced when first rising from bed or standing after prolonged sitting diminishes markedly. Seated activities like desk work or driving become noticeably more comfortable. Within 7 days, for numerous individuals, chronic lumbar discomfort is completely eliminated. Your nervous system has learned its new alignment. Your glutes consistently provide spinal support, and your hip flexors maintain release state. Long-term outcomes show your spine sustains proper alignment naturally without constant intervention. You're no longer managing daily pain. You've eliminated the foundational cause. This represents permanent relief rather than temporary symptom suppression. This protocol proves ideal for office workers, drivers, or anyone whose occupation involves regular seated positioning. It demonstrates particular effectiveness for individuals over 45 when hip flexor restriction tends to intensify and back pain becomes persistent. Execute this 90-second protocol twice daily for 5 consecutive days, morning and evening without missing sessions. Your spine is designed to function pain-free. This 90-second protocol provides your body precisely what it requires to return to that pain-free state. The reason this protocol succeeds where alternatives fail lies in recognizing that pain location doesn't necessarily indicate pain origin. Your nervous system routes discomfort signals through pathways that can make hip dysfunction register as spinal distress. When the psoas remains contracted for extended durations, it doesn't merely pull the pelvis forward. It also creates compensatory tension patterns throughout the entire posterior chain. Your hamstrings contract attempting to counterbalance the anterior pull. Your erector spinae muscles along your vertebral column work excessively trying to maintain upright posture against forward pelvic tilt. Your quadratus lumborum, the deep muscle connecting your lowest rib to your pelvis, becomes chronically strained from attempting to stabilize a structure being pulled in opposing directions. This cascading compensation pattern explains why massage, spinal manipulation, or even injections often provide only temporary relief. They address downstream effects without touching the upstream cause. The psoas sits so deep within the body that manual therapy rarely reaches it effectively. Even skilled practitioners struggle to access this muscle through layers of abdominal organs and surrounding soft tissue. The elevated surface stretch works because it uses your body mass and gravitational forces to create sustained elongation in a muscle that typically escapes manual intervention. The gluteal activation phase addresses another critical component most protocols ignore. Your glutes don't just extend your hip during locomotion. They function as primary pelvic stabilizers, creating a posterior counterforce to the anterior pull of tight hip flexors. When you sit for extended periods, your glutes remain in a lengthened, inactive position. Over time, your nervous system essentially forgets how to recruit these muscles effectively, a phenomenon called reciprocal inhibition. Your body compensates by overusing smaller, less efficient muscles like the piriformis and tensor fasciae lati, which weren't designed for that workload. This overuse frequently generates additional pain patterns that get misdiagnosed as separate conditions. The bridge exercise with maximum gluteal contraction does more than strengthen. It reestablishes the neural pathways between your brain and your glutes, reminding your nervous system that these muscles exist and should be engaged during daily activities. The intense contraction cue isn't just motivational imagery. It's a neural activation technique that ensures you're recruiting the entire gluteal complex rather than compensating with hamstrings or lower back muscles. The burning sensation during the hold indicates motor unit recruitment, actual muscle fibers coming back online after prolonged dormancy. The alternating spinal movement serves multiple functions beyond simple decompression. The flexion and extension pattern mobilizes the small facet joints between vertebrae that often become restricted when the spine is held in one position too long. These joints contain proprioceptive nerve endings that feed information to your brain about spinal position. When they become immobile, your brain loses accurate data about where your spine actually is in space, leading to poor movement patterns and increased injury risk. The rhythmic movement restores both joint mobility and neural feedback, improving what's called spinal proprioception. The flowing motion also promotes fluid exchange within intervertebral discs. These discs lack direct blood supply and instead rely on movement-induced pressure changes to draw in nutrients and expel waste products. Prolonged sitting creates sustained compression that prevents this exchange, essentially starving your discs and allowing metabolic waste to accumulate. The pumping action of the alternating movement reverses this process, rehydrating discs and improving their shock-absorbing capacity. This is why many people feel noticeably taller after performing the protocol. You're not actually growing, but your discs are regaining their proper height as they rehydrate. The twice-daily frequency isn't arbitrary. Morning practice addresses the stiffness that accumulates overnight. When you sleep, especially if you sleep on your back or side with hips flexed, your psoas remains in a shortened position for 6 to 8 hours. The morning protocol resets your alignment before you begin daily activities, preventing you from reinforcing dysfunctional patterns throughout the day. Evening practice releases the accumulated tension from daily sitting, preventing it from becoming permanent structural change. This rhythm matches your body's natural tissue remodeling cycle, where tissues adapt to the positions and stresses they experience most frequently. What makes this approach particularly effective is its recognition that pain elimination requires pattern interruption. Your body has learned a dysfunctional movement pattern over months or years of poor positioning. Simply performing the protocol once won't override that learned pattern. Consistent twice-daily practice creates new neural patterns that gradually become your default. This resembles learning any motor skill. Repetition builds automaticity. After 1 week of consistent practice, many people find their pelvis naturally maintains better alignment even without conscious effort because their nervous system has recalibrated what neutral feels like. The protocol also succeeds because it requires minimal equipment and time investment, removing common barriers to consistency. No facility membership, no specialized equipment, no extensive time commitment. Just elevated furniture in 90 seconds. This simplicity matters because the optimal intervention is the one you'll actually perform consistently. Complex protocols requiring special equipment or extensive time fail not because they're ineffective but because people abandon them. The military origin isn't marketing fiction. Special operations personnel face unique physical demands requiring solutions that work under field conditions with zero equipment. The protocol emerged from that necessity, which is why it translates so effectively to civilian application. Understanding the mechanism behind your pain transforms your relationship with your body. Rather than viewing yourself as broken or defective, you recognize that your body is responding logically to the conditions you've imposed on it. Sitting isn't inherently harmful, but sitting without counterbalancing movement creates predictable consequences. The protocol provides that counterbalance, restoring equilibrium to a system that had tipped out of balance. This perspective shift from passive victim to active participant in your own physical health proves as valuable as the pain relief itself. You're not managing a chronic condition. You're correcting a biomechanical error that has simple, direct solutions. The age consideration isn't arbitrary. After mid-40s, connective tissue loses elasticity, muscles lose mass, and joints undergo natural changes that make you more vulnerable to postural dysfunction. The same hours of sitting that a younger body might tolerate with minimal consequence can create significant problems for an older body. This doesn't mean aging inevitably causes pain. It means the margin for error shrinks and preventive maintenance becomes more critical. The protocol serves as that maintenance, keeping your musculoskeletal system functioning optimally despite age-related changes you cannot prevent. The rapid improvements people experience within days occur because you're not healing damaged tissue or reversing degenerative changes. You're simply removing the mechanical stress that was creating the pain signal. Once the stress disappears, the pain disappears. This is fundamentally different from conditions involving actual tissue damage, which require healing time. If your pain doesn't improve within 1 week of consistent practice, that suggests your pain may stem from a different cause requiring professional evaluation. The protocol works specifically for pain originating from hip flexor tightness and anterior pelvic tilt. Not all lower back pain fits that pattern, though research suggests the majority does. The beauty of this approach lies in its elegant simplicity. Rather than attacking pain with complex interventions, medications, or surgical procedures, it recognizes that most musculoskeletal pain emerges from movement pattern dysfunction. Your body adapted to the demands you placed on it. Sitting for hours daily taught your hip flexors to shorten, your glutes to deactivate, and your spine to compress. The protocol simply teaches your body a different pattern, one that restores natural biomechanical function. This isn't revolutionary medicine. It's basic mechanical engineering applied to human anatomy. The revolution lies in recognizing that most people don't need complex interventions. They need simple, consistent correction of the patterns creating their dysfunction. Your body possesses remarkable capacity to self-correct when you provide the right inputs. This protocol delivers those inputs in the most time-efficient package possible, making pain-free movement accessible to anyone willing to invest 3 minutes daily.